All right, it's 1:02 p.m., so I think we'll get started with the event. Thanks to everyone who's here watching and listening. Today's event will be a career paths panel where we have 4 very lovely women in CS here to talk about and share their experiences with us. The structure of today's event will be first some introductions from the speakers, and then I'll be asking a few prepared questions, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience where you can just type your questions in the chat. I'll filter through them, try to go through as much of them as possible, and then we'll wrap up at around 2 p.m. So I guess without further ado, we can have the speakers introduce themselves. I'll just go across in the order of my... Oh no, did Sumaya disappear? She's having technical issues. Okay, I think we can wait a minute for her to come back, but I'll go across my screen and then have you guys introduce yourselves. The introductions don't have to be super brief. Feel free to take like a couple minutes like talking about yourself. Hello, Sumaya. Okay. I think let's start with Fatima's introduction, and then we'll see if Suma is back by the time we're all done.
Hi, everyone. My name is Fatima, and I work as a software engineer at Yelp. I'm based in Canada. I did my undergrad from the University of Waterloo, and I'm currently also pursuing a master's in data science from HEC Montreal. But yeah, I'm very happy to be here today.
Awesome, thank you. Next, can we have Jane introduce herself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jane. I am also Canadian. I went to Western University up in Canada. I did a dual degree in computer science and business. I graduated last year, and I'm currently working as a product manager at Datadog, which is a company based in New York.
Great, that's so exciting. I'm also Canadian, so this is super cool. Okay, Nancy, could you introduce yourself as well?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Nancy, and I'm a web engineer at Robinhood. And I grew up in Southern California, and I'm currently living in the Bay Area. And I graduated from MIT in 2020, majoring in computer science.
Awesome, that was great. Let's see if Sumaya is back. There are a few comments in the chat about missed connections that are meeting up now. Okay, I think we can keep going with some individual specific questions, and then we might pause in the middle to see if our last panelist is back. So I guess the first questions we have are for Jane. We wanted to know, how does your work as a product manager differ from being a software engineer?
Sure. So I've only worked as a product manager and not a software engineer. So I think the other panelists can speak more to what they do on a day-to-day. But in terms of what I do as a product manager, I kind of see it as being at the intersection of business and tech. Overall, you own a product or a piece of a product. This could be software, hardware, like your iPhone. And your goal is really to improve this product to meet the needs of your users. So if you think about this as kind of a sequential kind of software development cycle in which you start with ideation of what's your problem statement, what do your users need, and then you go into what you need to build and what is the best thing to build for your users. And then you go into design and then engineering and then go to market. The product manager kind of owns that entire life cycle. So the work kind of is more of a bird's eye view compared to software engineering, where you get really deep with the code and kind of all the bugs and you're doing the execution, compared to in product management, it's more so higher level overall strategy, problem solving, kind of at a different kind of view, more bird's eye view compared to deeper in the weeds. So it's a little bit different. We do the same work. Product managers work very closely with engineers, and oftentimes you're doing the same work, but you're kind of answering different questions in what you're building, and for example, when you should build it, and are we building the right things, is what the product manager focuses on.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. Could you speak a little bit more about how your CS background shapes your day-to-day work?
Yeah, sure. So the company I work at is called Datadog. We are in cloud analytics and monitoring, and they're a relatively technical suite of products. So my background in computer science at Western really helped me understand the fundamentals of how things work, how the backends work, and also working with engineers. Because product managers work with engineers every day, you have your engineering team and you really talk to them and work with them on a daily basis. It's really important that you understand the lingo, so you can contribute to discussions, you understand their pain points, how realistic are these engineering development deadlines. So I think my CS background definitely really contributed to being able to work well as a product manager, but this definitely varies firm to firm. Some companies actually prefer if you don't have a CS background, so you can provide that kind of new, fresh eyes perspective and you don't get bogged down with the technical stuff. So it really depends on the company, on the team, on the product. But at the company and product that I'm on, it's definitely, I found, beneficial.
Awesome. That's really interesting to hear. I guess, so we're also curious about hearing more about your decision to go into product management, and specifically, how did your experience with case competitions and hackathon shape that decision?
Yeah, so in college, I loved competing in case competitions, hackathons. I just thought they were super fun. And a great way to also travel to different cities, meet new people, work on different problems. So I think I definitely drew similarities between these hackathons and case competitions because you're there for maybe a weekend, 36 hours, whatnot. You're given a problem statement and you're starting from nothing. You're starting from zero. It's really up to you to build your case on what solution you should build out, what are the possible solutions you should consider, and really crafting a story or a pitch to kind of sell your solution and convince others that this is the right solution for the problem statement that you're solving. So that was in the case competition and hackathon kind of setting. It's really similar to in product management. That's exactly what you do, the whole life cycle we talked about, from ideation to development to go to market. It's really the same thing, but it's your daily job. You're not just here for one project or one weekend. So I really realized that I enjoy doing that. And throughout these case competitions, also met other people, learned about different career paths, including product management. And that's how I kind of got into product management as well.
Awesome. That's super cool. So it sounds like people who are interested in product management might want to consider doing case competitions and hackathons in college too.
Yeah, or just for fun,
Or just for fun too.
Travel, meet cool people. So definitely really fun to do in college while you can. Because when you graduate, you don't have the same opportunities to do that anymore.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Now let's pivot to another important topic in having a career in CS as a woman. Fatima, we were wondering if you had any thoughts on how to overcome imposter syndrome.
Yeah, for sure. So I think to start off, I think it's one of the things that helped me out immensely was just to start a conversation about it. I think when you're sitting at your desk thinking about oh, this is something that I'm dealing with, you don't realize that the person sitting literally right next to you could be feeling the exact same way. So I think I felt significantly better about it and about addressing it once I started talking to people about it. I still remember the first panel that I attended on imposter syndrome, and just the sheer relief that I felt afterwards, because I was hey, so many other people feel the exact same way that I am. And again, I think once you start having these conversations, you learn from other people's experiences. Sometimes, like a lot of the times, actually, they can share really helpful tips about how they address it on a day-to-day basis. So, for example, I've had people who've told me that, oh, they have like these daily wins lists that they keep, like, where they just like keep adding the little wins, like, that they have every day. So yeah, for sure. I think that's the first thing. Secondly, I think I can say from my own experience that for sure it gets better with time and experience. I think that's a big part of it. Like when I first started out in CS, how I felt versus how I feel now, there's like a huge difference. So for sure, I think your time and experience plays a big part. And then I think lastly, what I would say is that it's very important to keep working. Like at the end of the day, when I look back at times where I really used to feel imposter syndrome, it was, I think for me at least, it was largely driven by the fact that I used to be probably like the most junior person on the team, right? So obviously if you're very junior, obviously you lack the experience, you lack a lot of knowledge. So I remember that for all my internships, I used to walk around with like a notepad where I keep adding things that I didn't know. And like later on I would go back to it and I fill in those missing gaps. So I think the last part of it is definitely the keep working, keep actively identifying areas where you feel you struggle or you lack knowledge about. And I think lastly, don't like be cognizant of the fact that like don't let it kind of hold you back. Like there's so many times even now where when I'm talking to like let's say like a very senior engineer or like a tech lead, sometimes my imposter syndrome kicks in and like I sit there like trying to come up with like what message to send them, and I sit there for like 10 minutes just like reworking that message over and over again, hoping that, oh, maybe like I don't want this message to make me look like I don't know what I'm talking about. So like be cognizant of that, and don't let it hold you back when you're on like a day-to-day basis. So like if it comes to talking to senior engineers, whether it's contributing in your daily like team-wide discussions or whatnot. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really inspiring and motivating to hear. I love the idea of like the daily wins list and just being open and to keep persevering. It's awesome. We're also wondering, Fatima, like how is working a job at the same time as pursuing a master's degree? Like what has that taught you?
Uh, Honestly, I could talk about that all day long, but it's definitely I'm not gonna lie about it. It's definitely, I think it's one of the most challenging things that I've done so far. It's definitely taught me like a couple of, I think, very important lessons. To start off, I think it really helped me identify like my own kind of limitations, right? Because I think that like when you first start out, obviously you're very young, you're full of energy, so you think that you can do anything and everything that you can set your mind to. And while that's true, but there are limitations to what we can do, right? And like how much kind of pressure we can keep putting on. So my first semester of my master's, I was naive enough. So I was doing like I had my full-time job, but I was naive enough to sign up for 3 courses. And everyone that I met, they told me that you shouldn't do that. Start off with like 1 course, see how it goes, and then you can add more. But I was like, no, you don't know me, you don't know what I'm capable of. And I went ahead and I signed up for 3 courses. And obviously that entire semester was very, very difficult because I had the full-time job and then I had school. And by the end, I remember it was a Friday and I had this one last submission due before I went into finals for this one course. Now I'd been very busy the entire week, so I hadn't gotten a chance to get started on that assignment. I remember it was 6 p.m. I just finished work and I'm like, okay, there's like 6 hours to the deadline. So I'll put something in and, I'll submit something. But I remember the moment I opened my laptop, I just froze. I just did not have the energy to submit that last assignment. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I need to drop out from this course because like, this is too much. I've been under way too much pressure for the past couple of months. So yeah, that's what I did. I ended up dropping that course. It was like the last assignment for that course. So I had put in all the work up to that point. But like at that point, the pressure just felt so crippling that I just couldn't move forward with it. I dropped that course. I started therapy afterwards because again, I needed to learn how to kind of let go of kind of all the pressure that I had accumulated over the past couple of months, and I needed to learn how to address it better for the future. So I think for one, it definitely helped identify my own kind of limitations and what I can take on and what I can't. Then again, like I said, I started going into therapy. So it really helps you realize that, you should seek help when you need it. And there's no harm in doing so. Then coming to like the good parts, I think my organizational skills and just like managing deadlines and whatnot is like next level now, because you just become such an expert. Because like I think about it this way, that like literally my day-to-day is already pre-planned. Like there's expectation from me from work, and there's expectations from me from like the school side. So like my days are pretty much like already pre-planned. There's not much input that I have. So even like coming down to like vacation time, like I put in my vacation time at the start of the semester, because I already know when midterms are going to come, when finals are, and that's when I like to take some time off from work so I can focus on school. And then I think you just become like a master at juggling deadlines, expectations. Yeah, for sure. I think it's I've gotten better at kind of managing people's expectation, both from like the work perspective and then the school perspective. But yeah, it's like I think if I would definitely not do it again for sure. Like my mom's a PhD, so my dad's always like kind of trying to push me into pursuing that as well. But I've like straight up told him that like I can't do this again. Like this was, I think, for what it's taught me, for sure, all my learnings have been very invaluable, but I for sure wouldn't do this again.
Amazing. Thanks so much for sharing your experience. It's really important. Like I can definitely relate to needing to learn how to like identify my own limitations and take care of myself when needed. So that's really great to hear. Let's pivot now to Samaya. We're wondering, how is being a mobile engineer different from other types of software engineering?
That's a great question. And let me just give first a quick introduction to myself, because I know I missed out the first few minutes. My name is Samaya Ahmed. I'm a senior mobile engineer for the Android platform. So that means basically I have been making Android apps for about 8 years. I got in like when we all used to have those old Android phones with a terrible UI. And the latest iPhone was like an iPhone 4. So that's the era I came from. Obviously, things have changed a lot, and mobile engineering as a field has developed a lot in these past 8 years, which is amazing considering that this job didn't exist 10 years ago. So I'm a senior engineer, most recently at Comcast, and that means I spend a lot of my days with architecture work, with meetings, and we can talk about that later. But to get to the question, how is mobile engineering different? Well, if you look at a mobile engineer's day-to-day, it won't look that much different from like a back-end engineer or a front-end web engineer. You're probably going to be writing code. You're going to be in meetings with product and design and management. You're also going to write, unit tests, but it's sort of the content of the code that's going to be different. So mobile engineers run applications on very limited resources. So if you think of your phone versus a server somewhere, which is where a backend application is hosted, a phone has got much less RAM, much less CPU power. It has much more limited resources. Sometimes you're dealing with a limited network if you're in a low Wi-Fi or a low mobile network area. So all our apps have to deal with all of these limitations. It means we have to write code that's very optimized, very efficient. We have to do a lot of work with caching and API inconsistencies, because we can't shut down the app if the user doesn't have Wi-Fi. You still have to keep working on it. So these are the sort of subtleties of mobile engineering that that aren't really apparent if you haven't tried it before. And then, of course, in the Android world, you have so many different types of devices. So applications can run differently on a Samsung device versus a Nexus or a Pixel device, because each of these companies develops their own version of the OS. Like if you look at the Samsung phones, they have their own wrapper around the Android OS, and sometimes that runs differently. So you sort of have to know, like down to the hardware compiler level, how these operating systems work and how to make sure that your app is going to have the same experience across all these different operating systems. And that last part is specifically Android. iOS engineers have a much more consistent time of it because Apple makes sure all of its devices are on a very streamlined, like a small set of operating systems. So those are the few things that are slightly different about mobile engineering. But what I find that's most different is that these days, the company's number one point of contact with customers is the mobile app. So that gets a lot of attention from customers and from the company. You're working on something that's driving maybe 90% of revenue or driving 90% of traffic to a particular product. So that's what makes it really critical. The experience on mobile is very much at the forefront for a lot of companies these days. And sometimes they don't even have to be tech companies, but mobile is sort of first and foremost in everyone's minds right now.
Yeah, as a customer, I can say that's definitely very relatable. Thanks
Yeah.
so much for your intro and your insightful answer. We also wanted to ask you about like how does your role change as you reach higher levels of senior roles in a tech company?
That's also a great question because I've been working on the same platform for 8 years, and that makes it sound like I've been doing the same thing for 8 years. And in some ways, that's maybe like 10% true. My job has changed a lot as I've gotten promoted, as I've gotten more responsibilities, as I've worked in different companies from the startup world to corporate. In general, the more senior you get, the more experience that you have, and the more you demonstrate this experience, you're expected to expand your scope of responsibility and expand your scope of impact. And that's a really important word, impact. Because an engineer who's sort of just starting out or who is at a junior level, the scope of their role is to do the work that they're given. You're an engineer, you're coding a lot. You're going to be given tasks to do, build out this feature, fix this bug. We're going to start making a new screen or a new set of, or a new application. Your job is to get a defined set of criteria and a defined scope of work from somebody else and execute. So a junior level engineer or a mid-level engineer's job is to execute and execute well. Once you get to the more senior level, you're expected to not just do your job and write your code, but you're going to start working on things that impact people outside of you, outside of your team, and sometimes across your organization. So this can be things like making architecture decisions. How are we going to implement, for example, analytics? And that means you're talking to product people and management about, okay, this is the library we're going to use for analytics. This is how much it costs. You have to talk about money and cost and justify the cost of those things. And I know, Jane, Datadog has been a big part of my conversations with management because we've worked with Datadog and we had to make an argument about why are we going with this versus another analytics library. And obviously, these are decisions that impact everybody in the entire organization because it's across the application. So your architecture decisions and your systems design comes into play here. And you're sort of building a framework for other engineers to build on top of. So your mistakes also get bigger. Apart from that, there's also the fact that you're expected to develop your teammates. So I do a lot of mentoring work with our junior engineers, even other senior engineers. So I will work on teams where I help people, I guide people through architecture decisions. I put together study groups if I see that some junior engineers have a skill set that we're going to need later on. So you work with managers to identify that we, as a team, we're lacking in certain skill sets. Here's how I can help build out those skill sets. Here's how we can all help promote our junior engineers and get them on a track of, getting to the next step in the track. And you also represent the company externally. So I speak at a lot of conferences, and this helps this helps the image of your company and of your tech group in particular. So as you start to get more and more senior in your role, sadly, you have more meetings, you have less code, but your impact does get bigger and bigger.
Wow, that's awesome to hear about like mentorship and growing impact. Super cool. Lastly, let's pivot to some questions for Nancy. We're wondering, what's it like working at Robinhood as the app became more and more prominent and the company grew?
Yeah, so I think it's crazy to think about since it's 2020 now, and I first interviewed in 2019 as I was going into new grad recruiting. And in 2019, there were only like 200 engineers and less than 1,000 people, and now we've quadrupled in size to around 4,000 people total. So it's really interesting to think about like how like the engineering has changed, and then how like the people that we're serving has also changed. So the user base also grew from around 10 million in 2019 to over 30 million users. So I think it's really nice to be here at a company where we're growing a lot. And I think one thing that I think stood out to me from the beginning until the end, and it sounds cheesy, but I feel like Robinhood's mission has like stayed consistent and has been like the driving force behind like a lot of the decisions that we make. And Robinhood's mission is to democratize finance for all. And I think like all the teammates that I work with, and myself included, like we really believe in that, or that's like our purpose in work. And I think as Robinhood has become like more prominent and the company has grown, it's a lot of responsibility because we want to make an even better product. And I think it's been really great to have a lot of ownership in the company since the company was smaller when I first joined, and to have a lot of impact with the work that I do. And I don't know, I think it's just been a really great time to learn about like a lot about scaling, reliability, to take on different roles like within my team, and just having a lot of fun with the growth.
That's awesome. It's great to hear about your mission and learning about new things as the company's growing. We're also wondering, could you explain what Asianhood is?
Yes. So this is also like kind of a funny story because when I first joined Robinhood, I saw that there wasn't an ERG for Asians and Pacific Islanders. So I was only 1 month into working, but then I was like, why not just create a channel and then see like who's interested? So I just went and started a Slack channel a month into working, and now we have a full-fledged ERG, and it's grown from 1 person to around 1,000 people. And it's been really great to lead Asianhood. Like we not only have cultural events like dumpling making, but also like workshops and safe spaces on like the roots of race or like the model minority myth. And we also talk about issues like the rise of anti-Asian racism and other things that have happened in the past couple years. And I think it's really meaningful because to give one example, like after the Atlanta shootings last year, I helped organize a company-wide town hall to talk about it and the history of anti-Asian racism. And we also had a panel of Asian hoodies talking about their own experiences with racism in America. And I thought it was really crazy because around 1/4 of the company came to our town hall, like over 500 people attended. And this may get conflicting opinions, but I strongly believe that if employees are happy and feel completely okay bringing their full selves to work every day, they'll do better work too. And I feel like ERGs help cultivate that space. And that isn't even including the fact that diversity in general is just beautiful and amazing. And I feel like diverse teams also do better work. So I really appreciate that Robinhood really supports their ERGs in holding bigger events or talking about issues, because these aren't just posts on social media or like a hashtag. Your identity is something that you bring with you every day when you go to work. You can't erase being your own race or like anything else that you are. So I didn't know how much ERGs would mean to me until I ended up starting work. And I really love being part of or an ally in other ERGs like Sisterhood, Black Excellence, it's Black History Month, and Latinhood. And I'd urge you all to also think about culture and being at a company that also values diversity.
Wow, that's amazing. It's so great to hear you've been doing important things for different communities at Robinhood. Yeah, so that wraps up our individual questions. It was so great to hear everybody's individual perspectives on their work and their lives. But now we're going to pivot to general questions where panelists can just feel free to chime in after every question with their thoughts. The first question is, how did your experience with internships in college affect your career path decisions?
I can kick it off. So my program was 5 years in college, and I kind of did a bunch of different internships in different industries. So after my freshman year, I worked at a startup doing business development, and it's kind of like a rotational thing. I kind of just did a mixed bag of different roles in that summer. The following summer, I worked in consulting at Deloitte, and that was like a 180, going from a small startup of 13 people to, such a large corporate company. And then from there, I entered PM. I spent a summer at Microsoft and then tried technical product management at Hulu, and then landed back into PM. And I'm a really strong believer that you can't know what you like unless you try it. And I think internships or your co-ops, your different semesters are the perfect way to explore interests outside of your courses. So maybe if you know that you love your CS courses in college, you want to try something different in the summer because you elsewise wouldn't have the opportunity to do that. So for me, it was really just trying different things, talking to upper years, alumni, and really sitting down and reflecting with myself after the internship. Did I really like this? What didn't I like? What do I want to try after, this internship? So it's really great. I also have friends that kind of just go into software development, do that for 4 years or 4 semesters, and they know that that's for them. But, college is the right opportunity and time for you to explore different career paths. So, go for it. It's very low risk. It's kind of like your safety net because you can switch careers once you start full time, but you kind of have more skin in the game from there. Internships are kind of like a 3-month, 4-month thing. If you don't like it, move on to the next thing. So yeah, that was kind of my path.
Yeah, that's awesome that you were able to try out many different things and reflect a lot on your experiences. Fatima, do you have more to add?
Yeah. So I think for myself, like my internships kind of helped me realize what I really valued in a company. So for one of my internships, I had the misfortune of working for a company that was actually very blatantly discriminatory. So I was hired alongside like one other male intern, and I don't even know why they did it. I don't even know if they were aware of what they were doing and how it was coming off. But like they made me sit outside in this like separate kind of room while the other male intern used to sit with the rest of the team. So it was overall a very horrific experience. And I think going through that, it just kind of helped me realize that, okay, like culture is something very important for me. And then for my next internship, I was very I was very kind of conscious of that. So even when I was applying to companies and whatnot, I made sure that I did my research before I went into interviews with them. And I think like for me, this was an important learning because like for example, going back to my undergrad, so like the University of Waterloo has like it's very big on software engineering in general, and they have like a very strong co-op program. And like I think like you kind of get swept up in like kind of like they I think you get swept up in terms of like what's fancy about the tech industry. I think a lot of people put a stress on like, oh, it's a very glamorous industry to work in. You get to work in like very fancy cities and you make a lot of money and whatnot. But I think there's not as there's not a lot of discussion on like other things that contribute to making your workplace a meaningful place to work in. So culture is a big part of that. So I think that it really, my internships kind of really solidified that for me, that like you can be paid all the money in the world, but if you're not having if you're not enjoying working with the people that you are, if you're not enjoying the company culture, like pretty soon, like that's like even the financial compensation isn't going to make up for how unhappy you are. And then secondly, I think it just kind of prepped me really well for full-time work. So in the sense, for example, through my internships, I learned that, okay, you should, like, being a software engineer isn't just about writing code. There's other aspects to it. So for example, managing your manager's expectation, right? So it kind of helped me learn that, oh, it's always better if you have those conversations at the very beginning. So, when I started working full-time, I had a very good idea that, okay, I'm going to have this conversation very early on with my manager, where I kind of get a sense of what their expectations from me are, and vice versa, right? So I think it just kind of helped me prep a lot better for full-time work. Then asking when to ask for feedback, I think with an internship, a lot of people are very used to asking feedback at like the very end of your internship, but like obviously in like a full-time role, that's not how it should be. Like, you should be actively asking for feedback, at given points. So I think, yeah, it just kind of helped me prep for all the other parts of being a software engineer that aren't about just writing code. So yeah.
I have a very quick point here because we've heard two really great perspectives. And what I want to bring to the table is, as somebody who has not had an internship, what if you don't get a chance to do it? What if like you're busy with schoolwork, or you just didn't have the knowledge or the opportunity to figure out how to get internships? That was me. And one of the things I would say is all of these points are great. Like what you just heard from Jane and Fatima, what you want is to expose yourself to different roles, different environments as much as you can. So I would say treat the early years of your career as the opportunity for an internship. Don't feel that you have to commit to a company and stay there for 5 years doing the same job, moving up the ladder. This is also your exploration phase to figure out what works for you, what you like. Startups are a great place to do this. I know that there's a lot of drawbacks like crazy hours, uncertain expectations, and uncertain pay. But if you find a good place at a startup, they're great places to wear a lot of hats and to try on different roles, take on a lot of different kinds of responsibilities. And exposure to all that does tell you, this is what I like. These are my strengths. This is something that I want to pursue in the future. So if you don't get a chance to do internships, you can also treat this first few years of your career, or maybe even later years of your career, as a chance to explore. A lot of software engineers, I find that at the 5 to 8 year markers, they've done the same work for many years, and they start exploring what else is out there. And there's companies that you can that have programs to help engineers switch to different careers. So there's always opportunities to explore. And the first few years are definitely the best time.
I would probably just say something similar, since Jane and Fatima have also talked about their internship experiences. So I just want to say, like, internships or a full-time job can really help determine what type of work you want to do, whether it's web, mobile, full stack, backend, machine learning. Outside of those categories, there's also more to that. What type of industry do you want to be in? Like, do you want to work in like the finance industry, fashion, self-driving cars? There's just so many industries, so it's cool to figure out like what you're interested in and what you're looking for in a company. Do you want to join a big-sized one, medium-sized, small? Do you want to work at a startup and have a lot of different hats, or do you want to work at a bigger company where maybe you're prioritizing different things? And also, like, what are you looking for in a manager, or like your team? So I feel like experience really helps to figure out like what you want.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much, everyone, for your answers. I thought they were really, really helpful. The next question is, could you describe what your day-to-day work looks like?
I can jump in here because right now I'm not working. I'm actually on a sabbatical that I took for myself to give myself a break and get that high school vacation feeling back again. So my days look very different, and I'm writing code for fun, which is something that something that I fell in love with at the beginning of my career. But back when I was working, in the past year, I found my days, very split, and sometimes, there's a lot of tension between how do I split up my days. There's always coding time, but a significant portion of my time was spent in collaboration, in teamwork, in communication, and meetings, and then also. And that could be anything like just regular old meetings with your product manager, or this could be things like team meetings to explain ideas and architecture to different people that you're working with. This could be one-on-one work with another engineer so that you're both collaborating on a feature or a problem. So surprisingly, I found myself doing a lot of talking. So that has been my experience lately. And I would say it's like 30% coding, 30% meetings, and then 30% communication, collaboration work.
I can jump in and share what my day-to-day looks like for a product manager. So if we do the breakdown of percentage time spent in meetings versus your individual working time, I'd say product managers overall just have a lot of meetings because your role is so cross-functional. You work with engineers, designers, product marketing, maybe CSMs on customer support or salespeople to close deals. So a lot of your day will be spent in meetings, but there also is time left over for you to do other things. But if we were to break down the different parts of your day, it might look something like this. So in the morning, you might have a 15-minute stand up with your engineers. After that, you might have a design one-on-one sync with your designer to go through recent iterations of maybe a feature or project that you're working on. After that, you might have a team sync with the other PMs on your closer team just to check in, see how things are going, what blockers your other fellow coworkers are facing, how can you address those as a team. After that, I might have maybe another 30 minutes or 1 hour with my engineering team lead, who is your counterpart, to figure out planning maybe for the next couple of months, or talk about what's next for after you finish the current project you're working on. And then maybe after that, you'll have a customer call with a customer that either needs support help or they have a feature request and they're facing pain points and they really want to work with you to see that feature get built out in your product. And this really depends on whether or not you are working at a B2B company or B2C. It's a lot more common to have these MVP most valued partners that are invested in your product on the B2B side compared to B2C. It's not really common for me as a user of Snapchat to call up Snapchat and be like, I want this feature, right? So it's a little bit different depending on the industry, the type of company, and the product you're working on. And then time left over, I might put aside a few hours to do doc writing, like writing up product briefs or product specifications for my engineers, or maybe review proposals from other teams if they want to build a feature that affects my product. So that's like a really rough breakdown of maybe what a day might look like for a PM.
I would say like a relatively junior engineer, honestly, I think my day sounds fairly boring in contrast to what other panelists have shared. But so I think like I'm only almost like 3 years into my career, so most of my time is at this point spent actively coding. Other than that, I'm very lucky enough that like I don't have to spend a lot of time in meetings. Like during the week, you'll have one-on-ones with like your engineering manager, then maybe your tech lead as well. But other than that, yeah, like my every day I have like a 15-minute stand up to where you just go over what you're currently working on, if there's any blockers or whatnot. Other than that, yeah, like the rest of your time is spent working on the code base, reviewing pull requests for other people, asking people to review pull requests for yourself. Like here and there, obviously you might jump on calls with your other team members if you want to discuss something or if there's like a blocker. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
I have a pretty similar schedule since I'm also an engineer and more junior, but I feel like I still have a good amount of meetings like scattered throughout the week. So one tip that I have in general for people who start working, if you are an engineer, is to like block out focus time, because I think that's one thing that's been helpful for me, so people don't try to schedule meetings over that time unless it's absolutely necessary. So having focus time is nice, so you can have, let's say, like 3 or 4 hours of time where you can just focus on coding on a specific project.
Awesome. That was really interesting to hear. Next question I wanted to dive into is, what is the workplace culture like at the company that you currently work for?
I guess I'll go first. Honestly, I absolutely love the culture at Yelp. When I was switching over to Yelp, I switched over last October, so like I've only been here a couple of months. But when I was switching over, I think one of my biggest concerns was one, what like the kind of like the work-life balance is, because I was really struggling with that at my previous company. And then secondly, for myself, I really wanted to be like at a company where they really value and encourage mentorship. Yeah, I've been very lucky in both those regards, honestly. Like Yelp has like they really encourage a work-life balance, like because their team Yelp is like fully remote. So because we have distributed teams, we agree, each team basically agrees on like a set of core working hours, because obviously you have people working from different time zones. So within those core working hours that you've established, you obviously you have to be online. If there's any meeting scheduled in that block, you have to attend unless you're out of office or some other reason. But yeah, I think that really gives me the flexibility to kind of pursue other things, like I said, like my master's. So if I'm so it kind of helps structure your day very well, because that, okay, these are my core working hours. Whatever work meetings I'm going to have, they're going to be within these hours. Before and after that, you have the flexibility to you can work whenever you're more comfortable, whatever suits your schedule. Then for sure, yeah. And then the second thing, they really encourage mentorship, so that's something that I absolutely love. Like I have a very supportive team. I've been learning so much from my tech lead, honestly. So yeah, I'm very lucky enough to work with like such knowledgeable people, and people that really encourage growth. I've never, like, even though I am kind of like the most junior engineer on my team, I'm never made to feel like I don't belong there. Like no one ever, like if I ask a question, no one ever looks at me like, really, why did you ask that? So it's very encouraging, very conducive. So yeah, I'm very, very lucky and very fortunate to be working here.
That was awesome. I think Fatima gave a great answer on like work-life balance and being remote first. So I can speak to other parts of culture at a company. So Datadog has around 3,000 employees, and we have different offices really spread out across the globe. New York and Paris are our two largest offices. So we have a lot of opportunities to meet coworkers in other cities, which is really exciting. My team, we're going to Paris at the end of next month to meet our engineering counterparts, which is really exciting. We've never met them in person. But outside of work, everyone is super social and friendly. Like I just went on a ski trip with some coworkers that I don't work closely with. They're on other teams, like last weekend. So we just rented some cars and went upstate to ski, which was really fun. We're doing like an escape room next week on one of the days. So everyone is just super friendly here. It's not just work. And obviously the work-life balance in tech is really great, but you also want to be able to build those relationships with your coworkers and not just see them as coworkers, they're also friends. But for our remote employees that don't have the opportunities to hang out in person, we also have really cool remote kind of hangouts too. So instead of just like playing Scrabble or whatnot through Zoom, we have like mixology classes online. We do pie baking together. So it's a lot of fun. And I think it kind of keeps the fun going, especially when companies are moving to being remote first. Now you want to still keep things engaging. And one thing that our leadership just did is open up coffee chats and lunch with our C-suites. So sometimes the CTO will just be sitting in the caf in the office one day, and there'll be this card saying like, come eat lunch with me. And you can literally just sit in front of the CTO and eat lunch with him, which I think is so cool and something that probably works better in a smaller company or a mid-sized one. But we really do have an open door policy here. And I think that's so important, especially since, at least me, I'm junior in my career, where you want to be able to voice those concerns to upper management if there's issues, just chat with them and really feel like you're valued in the company, even when you just joined. So I really love our open door policy and the fact that how things are really just fun here, even outside of just your 9 to 5 or 10 to 6.
I feel like I don't have too much to add on culture, but I also really, really love Robinhood's culture. And it's also, I think, similar to both Jane and Fatima, where we have a really supportive culture where like teammates are really helpful, but also like fun events like quarterly offsites. I've been going back into the office, so part of office culture has been like eating lunch with other engineers. We have like Taco Tuesday and like happy hours on Thursdays. And I don't know, I just really love going to work every day.
I mean, the culture at my home is great, but I can also talk a little bit about Comcast because the context there is a little different. I was part of a tech org in a non-technical company, so I know Comcast is very heavily technical in a manner of speaking, but it's primarily a utilities and media company as well as a tech company. So you could see very different aspects of the culture in the tech org. So there were really great things that I liked. There was a lot of casual, flat hierarchy style communication. So every engineer was encouraged to speak up in meetings. If even as a junior engineer, I wanted to take a lead on a feature or I wanted to present to management about something, I was encouraged to do that. And that kind of development and responsibility was really, really good for me, for my personal growth. There's also been aspects of the culture that I think have been changing. So especially things like remote work, which got a little more opposition, in some of the bigger, more corporate-style companies. I was always told you're definitely free to work remotely, but there was always a little bit of subtext about, well, you can't be in all the meetings if you're working remotely. That's something that I have definitely seen a lot more progress on in these past couple of years. So it's been very interesting to see how the tech culture has also been infiltrating in a good way into non-technical industries.
Awesome. It was really great to hear from everyone and to get a little color of like what the company cultures were like. I think the next question we have is to give like an overview of your career paths. I think we've already heard bits and pieces from previous questions, but I think it'd be interesting to hear about if there were any like important changes in your career path or just like some reflections on like the overall trajectory of like where you've come so far.
I can start, even though my career path hasn't been super long, but it's just a general mood of being in college and not knowing what you want to major in potentially. And then I started off majoring in mechanical engineering. And I actually started off first doing an internship at Milwaukee Tool, like a mechanical engineering internship. But then I think I realized two things, like one, I don't like physics enough to be a mechanical engineer, and like two, I felt like the internship, it was good, but then it just felt like a disconnect from what I really liked doing. So then after that, I started taking more CS classes, ended up really liking it, taking web dev classes, and I feel like it's really normal and okay in college if you're not completely sure what to do in the beginning or change paths like throughout college or even post college, because I have friends who have pivoted from other career paths. Like I have one friend who has a PhD in biology, but now he's also a web engineer at Robinhood, and he's someone that I work with a lot. So it's just a reminder that it's okay to change your mind and to try other things. But in college, I started out like going through like kind of like my internships as an overview of my career path. After that, I interned at Nordstrom Tech like during my sophomore summer, and then I did 2 internships during my junior year, one at Cruise Automation and then one at Reddit during the summer. And I feel like because all three of these companies were in different industries, it was really interesting to see like, oh, Nordstrom's not a traditional tech company. Like, what is that like? They're more focused on like fashion, and like Cruise Automation was more self-driving cars, and then Reddit was like more of a social media platform. So and then I feel like they're all like different sizes, but they're all more like mid-sized. And then I was like, oh, I feel like I really like having a lot of ownership over my work. I feel like this size feels right to me. And I feel like a lot of these past internships really influenced my decision to end up at Robinhood, because I was like, oh, I also like this size of company. When I was talking to engineers on the team or like the people who were interviewing me, I was like, oh, I value X, Y, and Z things in a culture, and they check off the boxes. So I feel like everyone's career paths will ultimately like influence their decisions long term. Yeah.
I guess I'll go next. So my journey started out like fairly like standard. So I started off as a computer science major at the University of Waterloo, but yeah, after the very damaging internship experience that I mentioned, I kind of reached a point where I was like, maybe I made the wrong decision and maybe I'm not in the right industry. Like I wasn't doing well at school. Then, after that internship, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, and maybe it's time for me to consider something different. But then at that point, I was like, okay, maybe I'll give this like one last try, and this time when I'm looking for an internship, let me just look for a company that has like a really good culture, and then I'll see if the tech industry is still something that I want to consider or not. Luckily for me, I did get to a company that honestly, I think not that company. I would say that my manager at that company kind of turned my life around. And because of her, I was like, no, I think this might just be the place for me. And yeah, honestly, I don't think I've looked back ever since. But like when I share this experience, what I always like to tell people is that be very open-minded in terms of what you imagine your future career to be when you're coming into school versus what it actually ends up being. I think like I can still think back to when I was going from high school to university, what I thought about tech, and now after having graduated, what I think about tech. Like it's so different. So I think you have to be very open-minded about that. Like there can be points where you go into school being a CS major, but maybe you won't end up liking it. And which is completely fair, which is completely normal. I think at that point you should just be open to kind of experimenting, right, with like other majors or other things that you might be potentially interested in.
I can talk about my career path a little bit. And hearing Nancy and Fatima, who have been doing so much research and thinking about their career, I'm going to tell the story of someone who had not planned
Samaya,
anything.
I think your audio is
Okay.
like a little bit fuzzy for me. Could you adjust
All right.
your mic a little bit, maybe?
Let me try this again and see if
Okay.
is this better? Okay, well, we can. Let's hear from Jane while I figure this out.
Okay, that sounds good. Sorry, thanks so much.
Sure, I can share my career path / experience. So in my freshman year, I was deciding between majoring in computer science or economics. So I took courses that would allow me to continue majoring in both after I pick in my second year. And I ultimately decided to stay in CS. I really thought that pairing a technical degree with a business degree is something that's really unique. And I can always read about economics in my spare time, which I did not, but yeah. So I think I shared a little bit about my internship experiences throughout the years in different industries and different functions at different sizes of companies. So I think that definitely really helped me figure out what I wanted to do. So I don't have too much to add there, but if I could go back and do something different, I would tell myself in my freshman year to be more open-minded. I think a lot of my peers were interested in, investment banking or consulting, and I kind of got swept with that crowd and influenced my decisions on, maybe I should stay in economics because a lot of my friends were. or I should apply to this company because it's like a hot company, everyone wants to be there. But I think it's really important to decouple yourself from that herd mentality, really sit down with yourself, because you know yourself best, your friends know you, but they don't know what's going on inside your head. So really think about what skills do you want to learn in the job that you want to be in. What company culture are you looking for, the size of the company, and really what do you enjoy doing and what will you enjoy doing in your 9 to 5. So I think that's a conversation everyone should have with themselves early on in their career, in your college career, to really just reflect on yourself, get influences from other people, but ultimately don't get influenced too much by what other people are doing, because sometimes it's not the right direction for you.
Maybe Sumaya could try talking again if her audio is better. Oh, sorry, you're muted, so. Sumaya, can you hear me? Oh, you're all good. Okay, I guess it's 2 p.m. So I think if you have other events that you want to attend, feel free to leave. But maybe I'll stay behind and like if any of the speakers want to stay behind and answer some of the questions in the chat, that's also okay. But yeah, in general, the audience should feel free to go attend their next events. Yeah, I guess like some of the most like frequently asked or like interesting questions in the chat included like tips for beginners getting started, and also how to narrow down on a specific path, or yeah, how to narrow down on a specific path.
I can jump in with how I think there's a question on what do you suggest for a beginner who's interested in product management to work on to create proof of work and secure internships. So what I did was I first started out with thinking about what are some skills that a good product manager has. This is like leadership, communication, it's very generic, but also taking a project or like, any initiative from 0 to 1, doing a lot of cross-functional work, being data-driven to make decisions, taking those skills and then think about what opportunities or things I can do to build those skills and plop it onto my resume. So that's where I started doing a lot of hackathons, case competitions, school projects, and putting that all on your resume. So whenever like I placed at a hackathon or whatnot, I would link to the Figma design that I made, or I would link to the project, so they can actually, the recruiters can dig deeper and really see your interest in product management or in tech. And this works for engineering roles as well. And then from there, once you have a really solid resume, it helps you secure these internships. And what I found really helpful was reaching out to upper years, to alumni in product management, not just people in their senior year or a few years out of college, but also more experienced people that are interviewers themselves at the company they're at. They can share insights that maybe we don't have since we're kind of super young, right? So really think about who can give you the best feedback to improve your interviewing, to improve your resume, probably them because they've been through it all and they are interviewers themselves. So yeah, I also did a lot of cold reach outs for coffee chats at companies where I didn't know people at, and people are generally really kind. They'll spend 20 minutes to talk to you. Just make sure you show up to those coffee chats prepared with a list of questions. You don't want to waste their time. You want to show you did your due diligence on the company, that you're not just throwing out your resume to as many companies that will take you. Really show your interest in the company and be interested. And maybe sneak in, the question of, can I get a referral from you at the end, but do it in a nice way. Obviously read the vibes, but just, it's the whole process of recruiting. Just once you're in it, it's, very repetitive, but don't get discouraged. Keep doing it and always reach out to other people to help you out if you're a beginner.
I see a somewhat related question about how to handle rejection. And that's a great point because I have been rejected many times in my career. I still get rejected even now. But as somebody who has done hiring for my team and who has interviewed candidates for my team, um, I do want to clarify that rejection truly is not about you being good enough or not good enough, because that's how it feels. Especially, like, even to me, if I get rejected, it's like, okay, well, why wasn't I good enough for this interview? I thought I did okay, et cetera, et cetera. And the reality is there's so many different reasons you can be rejected that are really more subtext. There are things like maybe you're overqualified for a role or you're underqualified for a role. There could be nothing wrong with your interview performance, but maybe they want somebody in the role who can start on day one without help. Maybe they don't have resources to train you or mentor you, and that's why they reject you. Sometimes it's because they just need people who can handle certain tech stacks, and you have good skills, but you don't have the exact experience with that particular stack. Sometimes it's just companies just aren't sure. Like, one of the things that I learned was that companies tend to reject. They do not want to run a risk of accepting a bad candidate. And that's for many reasons. It's because it's very expensive for them to hire somebody and onboard them and train them and then figure out that, hey, this person isn't working out, and then deal with finding somebody else. So if they cannot get a read on you in an interview, they will just be on the safe side and they may just reject you. And that's unfortunately a reality. Hiring processes are very, very arbitrary. That's an unfortunate truth also. Every company is going to do it differently. Some teams have rubrics, some teams go by, intuition or feedback, and hiring is a very, very imperfect science. So I recently got rejected a couple of months ago and reached out to a friend, and he told me, yeah, I also got rejected from this company. I also thought I did well. Neither of us knew why, but I guess that there's certain business reasons why they didn't want to take a chance on me. So I had to figure out I had to take all of this into consideration when I get rejections. It's not just me. It could be many, many reasons. And an interview isn't me asking them, am I good enough to work for you? It's a business meeting between two people, a client and a customer, and they're figuring out if this business deal is a good deal for both parties, and that business deal is the job. So that's a perspective that may help when going through the interview process, and there will always be rejections. I'm sorry. This is the truth.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for your thoughts on this question. And I want to give a huge, huge thank you to the speakers for coming out and sharing so much wisdom with us today and staying over to answer a couple of questions in the chat. I'm sorry that I couldn't get through all the questions, but we are very over time. So I guess let's give a virtual round of applause for our speakers and end the event here. Thanks so much for coming, everyone. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.